Hey, this is Tom here with Tom,
Hey,
talking about
everybody.
intentional culture, and we were talking about the value of trust yesterday. And you said something that was really interesting to me about trust being bi-directional. And so I kind of wanted to explore that a little bit with you today. What were you talking about? What did you mean? Why does it matter that we pay attention to trust being bi-directional?
Well, in my view, trust is something that happens between two people. And I like to use a bank account metaphor for this, in that we all sort of have a bank account of trust with people that we encounter. And people are different. So some people will have on one extreme, and I've never met anyone like this, but somebody could conceivably trust people they meet zero, not at all. Don't give them any trust. And on the other end of the spectrum, you have people who conceivably would give you full trust, like go ahead and stay in my house, and I don't lock the doors, so just go on in. I mean, that's obviously not many people like that, but there may be someone. Most of us land somewhere in the middle. We either tend to give a little more, a little less trust at a starting point, and then our interactions with those people either raise or lower that trust balance. And and what I think is interesting, when we were talking, you mentioned something about trusting teams or trusting organizations. And I would contend that really what that is that you have a bunch of people that you have individual bank accounts with, let's say on your team. Let's say you know four of the people on your team really well, and you trust them, and they have a high balance in their bank account. And you get somebody new in, and they have whatever the default bank account balance is. But on in aggregate, because you have a high balance with some of the team members, you may give that person a higher level of trust as a member of the team, because you're sort of thinking about the team in aggregate when you say, all right, I'm going to trust this person because they're a member of the team. But I would contend that's derived from the individual balances of the other members of the team. And it's the same with the organization. The longer you work in a company, the more people you know, the more trust accounts you build, the more you trust the organization. But it's either going to be the default value you give anybody that you meet, or it's going to be raised or lowered by those individual encounters and what you learn to trust about the people around them. Um,
So,
so because it's a two-way thing, like everybody has a balance. Like you have a balance with them, they have a balance with you. That that you were talking about respect. Go ahead and talk about what you were saying about respect.
the we got into this discussion about uh, because I work with somebody who really considers respect sort of a core value, and you consider trust a core value, and you were saying you thought respect was incorporated inside of trust, which I thought was a really interesting point of view. You're like, I'm not sure I need respect. I think what you think you need, what you're getting from respect as a value, I'm getting from trust.
And I would go further than that to say that all of the great things that people think of as values are embodied in trust. So you mentioned respect, but you could talk about accountability, responsibility, integrity, empathy, kindness, you name it. When it's a value that has to do with human interaction, I would contend that all of those values are embodied in trust. Because if you think about the bank account, if somebody lies to you, their trust balance can go way down. If somebody says they're going to do something and they come through when like they said they would, their balance is going to go up. If they don't, the balance is going to go down. If you're hurting real bad and the person doesn't even notice and just treats you like normal and you're obviously in pain, their trust balance will go down. You'll be like, this person doesn't give a crap about me. So all these things, these interactions, we don't actually, obviously make a ledger entry, but we do in a way. We are always evaluating our relationships and how people are behaving and whether they're trustworthy or not.
So we often in intentional culture and when we're doing agile engagements, we'll talk about trusting the team to deliver something, and you've captured that as it's an aggregate of the people on the team, and perhaps a function of how you've organized and set up those teams. But you have to trust that they're actually going to follow the system that you've set up for them. There's also trust, though, in the other direction. Like the team has to, a member of the team has to trust the manager, whoever they're reporting to, uh, is going to treat them in a way that they want to be treated. Give an example of that. If I estimate a task, a programming task is going to take 10 hours, and it actually takes 20 hours because my estimate was wrong, you have to trust that the manager understands software. Sometimes things that you estimate that take 10 hours will take 1 hour, and sometimes they'll take 20 hours. Unfortunately, in software, sometimes it'll take 100 hours. It's just the nature of the field. If you don't have that trust that the manager will understand what happens to the communication, to the conversation, to the
Well,
work.
what you're talking about is trusting the reaction the manager will have,
Right.
right? I mean, whether they will have a reasonable reaction or not, whether they're going to be understanding, whether they're going to be supportive, or whether they're going to be punitive and hostile. And so this is why, we could get into a conversation about leadership behaviors, but this is why being a leader is such a challenge. It's such a underrated capability. Like we promote people to leaders with no training and expect that somehow magically they're going to understand all these things. But if you're not taught, it takes you years to learn by experience what works and what doesn't. Well, here's the other thing that I think underlies this is that I believe that we all have to start with the base assumption that we're all have good intentions and we're all doing our best. Now, that's not always the case. I know that. But those are things that I feel like, and again, it's just me, but I feel like it's reasonable to make those assumptions by default. Like even if I meet somebody right off the street and for some reason I have to have some transactional conversation with them, I'm going to assume their intentions are good and that they're doing their best. If I detect that they're trying to be deceptive or something, their bank account can drop to zero real quick. But I start there and then I look for signs that that's not the case. Transparency is another value that I think is encapsulated in trust.
Trust. Yeah. I can see it. And that maybe is good for some future conversations. We'll wrap this up. But
Yeah.
talking about some of the other values, maybe even doing that with respect and going, well, here's where I think respect is really can be captured in trust. Here's where transparency can be captured in trust. Here's where honesty is a function of trust. Some of the other things that people would be inclined to put in, you can talk about. I think we're going to get those covered. And then what you bring to the equation with intentional culture and other things is ways to have these conversations, ways to organize work, to to build trust in both directions by how we show up and actually work, which is really cool. So we'll be looking forward to those use cases as well. All right, Tom. Well, thanks for updating me and giving more insights in your bi-directional trust bank account world. I'm
Always a good
still
time.
I'm still working it, but you're getting me. You're slowly getting me on board. I'm like, yeah, I think it'll work. I think everyone will be taken care of.
Wearing you
Uh,
down, baby.
we
Wearing you
we
down.
need we need to take seriously trust. Thanks, everyone. If this is posted someplace where you can comment below. What do you think about trust? Always interested in your feedback. All right, we'll talk later.